So very good afternoon, everyone. This is Vijeta Shastri here. I'm from TIE Bangalore. It's absolutely a delight for us to collaborate and work with the CISO platform, Fire Compass, Bharat Innovation Fund, and of course the TIE IoT Forum to bring together this wonderful webinar. So today it is about building a security program for startups, preventing and responding to breaches. This is something that has been hitting the headlines all the time, and I definitely am sure that as founders, as startups, as small business owners, you all must be aware as well as take the steps to prevent this from happening. So CISO platform is doing a series of webinars in association with us at TIE and at IoT Forum and Bharat Innovation Fund. And today the esteemed speakers are Ravikiran Annaswamy, who's the CEO of Numosity, of course, and a TIE Bangalore charter member. We have Sunando Bhattacharya, the CEO of Indicus. We have Vijendran Sridharan, CISO platform, of course, and also from Capillary. And then we have Anant MS, who's from Fire Compass. And of course, we have Madhurima Agarwal, the director of NetApp, and of course, he also happens to be our charter member. And today she's playing the role of the moderator in this wonderful session. So a little bit about Madhurima before I ask her to take over. Madhurima, who will be moderating, she works as the director for engineering program with the global responsibility for leading the NetApp accelerator. Must say that she has been doing a phenomenal job, and the startups have benefited. The ecosystem and community has taken a lot of value and knowledge from her dedication. She has over 16 years of experience spread across enterprises and startups. And of course, if you have any questions for the speakers to the audience, I would like to let you know, kindly drop them in the question box of your webinar and control panel. And definitely they will be addressed by the speaker through the moderator from time to time or at the end of the session. Thank you so much for this. And I'm sure all of us are looking forward to a very, very good webinar and learning session. Madhurima, over to you, and thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Vijeta. Thanks everyone for joining in on an afternoon to hear about this discussion. And as Vijeta has already spoken about, who the panelists are, I will still request them to share a couple of lines about about them before we start with the Q&A. But before we do that, let me share with you the topic of today's discussion is building a security program for startups, preventing and responding to cyber breaches. Now, terms like ransomware, malware, phishing, denial of services, this has become common words for us to hear every other day or read about in the newspapers. And did you know, I was surprised when I got to know that the average cost of data breach is $3.92 million in remediation, fines, and lost business opportunity for organization. The average time to identify a breach in 2020 was 228 days. And the average time to contain the breach was 80 days. Talking about dollars, the EU GDPR sets a maximum fine of 20 million euros or 4% of annual global turnover, whichever is greater for infringements. Hearing these numbers, I'm sure all of you have doubly ensured that your organizations are secure. And given that we have two CEOs and two CISOs on the panel today, we'll take a holistic view of what it means on the business side as well as on the implementation side. So before we may I ask everybody to just give a 1-minute introduction about yourself, and can we begin with Ravi?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Madhurima. So I'm Ravi. I am the CEO of Numosity Technologies. Come with more than 2 decades of experience in the telecom and the IT industry, working mainly in the IoT space and a lot of solutions for the India and the APAC market. Right now, my company is mainly focused on electric vehicles and how to bring electric vehicles into India. But we are the cloud and the digital platform. So we are not the vehicle manufacturers, cloud and digital, which makes us interesting target for a lot of people to come and look at what we are doing. So I think that's what we are going to talk today. I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thanks, Ravi. Sunando, do you want to go next?
Sure. So my background, I've been in the IT industry for 20 plus years now, working in the managed ICT domain. Started Indicus about 8 years back. So what we do is we enable telcos, ISPs, data centers globally, launch an in-country public cloud service. So in a way, a micro or mini AWS kind of a service. We look at security not just from our internal challenges of how we manage our code, how we manage our software, but also from addressing it at a cloud migration level or a cloud digital transformation level. And we do it for our customers. So I'm going to talk about those perspectives today.
Thanks, Sunando. Vijay?
Hey, good afternoon to all of you. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer and Data Protection Officer for Capillary Technologies. Capillary Technologies caters to around 400 customers globally. Okay, we are also setting our foot in US strongly now. We handle a huge amount of customer data, end customer data. The kind of data that we handle at Capillary is through two businesses. One is our loyalty points and rewarding and campaigning module, the customer relationship module, the SaaS application, where if you go to any branded shop like Louis Philippe, you get loyalty points. These large brands rely on Capillary to manage their points. We have a reward points and rewards management engine. The other one is the other large data handling that we do is through our e-commerce portals. For huge brands, we also handle their e-commerce portals. So for all our customers, most of customers, we handle their offline, that is loyalty, customer traction, customer interaction, loyalty points, rewarding, and everything, and also their online presence by managing their e-commerce portals. Okay. We take care of their digital marketing, all those things. That is the landscape of the data that Capillary handles and the data that Capillary protects. I come from Freshworks, was CISO for Freshworks, CISO for Sirion Labs. And before that, I belonged to the Standard Charter in the Fidelity Investments world for around 15 years, KPMG, Wipro, Stanchart, and Fidelity. Now with the startup world, here we'll be looking forward to discuss more here. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Vijay. Anant?
Yeah, hi, Anant here. I am the CISO of Fire Compass and also Customer Success Advisor. Prior to this, I was a CISO of a bank for about 4 years, and I have about 25 plus years of IT experience. I worked for large organizations both in India and in US. I will be the SME type, looking at how security can be embedded into the startup ecosystem and align it better with the business needs. That will be the focus that I'm going to talk on today. Thank you.
Thanks, Anant. I am very, very excited to hear, the variety of topics that we are going to cover today. So let's get started. Given that most of our audience are, startup founders, entrepreneurs in the early stage, Ravi and Sunando, I want to get your thoughts on what do you see are some of the challenges in the security space that are faced by startups specifically? And Ravi, if you may go first.
Sure. Thanks, Madhurima. So in whatever we do, there are several challenges we are facing as a startup. For instance, I'll talk about a few of the challenges we have faced and what we have seen so that it gives you a real world perspective. We've had instances where during our product journey, our cloud servers have been, let's say, once we got a very high AWS bill on a daily basis, and Amazon tried to block our account, saying that our servers are being used for crypto mining. So we weren't sure what happened, and then it took us quite some time. We talked to AWS, blocked it. We found a very interesting reason why it happened. We had a couple of contractors and interns who had done some work in our company, and the sample code, what they picked up, they had posted it in some public GitHub, and then it had an access token. We really didn't know why that happened. It was costing us quite a lot of money. In fact, it did cause a huge cloud bill, and we could only salvage a little bit, but the servers were used, and we ended up paying a lot of money to the cloud. That's one. Second is we have seen in our cloud cases where people have hacked into our systems and threatening us, saying unless we pay them by Bitcoin, they will bring our systems down. We have successfully thwarted those. We have taken care that our servers didn't, nothing really happened to our systems, but they did breach some of our cloud servers and left some files there to tell us that, hey, I've been here. So I think those been some of the threats where we've really tried to ensure that our customer systems are safe, because many of our customers depend on that and we don't want a challenge. Recently, just few weeks back, they also they've been we are a B2B platform. There are a lot of customers who use our systems. So there are hackers who claim that they've been able to breach the system and ask for money to our customers. So it becomes a constant discussion for us to be able to tell our customers that systems are safe, you don't have to worry. But they get constant threat from hackers asking for anywhere between a few lakh rupees to lots of rupees in India right now in terms of rupees. So we've seen different kinds of attacks which happen, and then we being the startup, always the question is to us to say, are you really, is your system really safe? Is your data policies really safe? Have you taken care of everything? And it takes quite some effort for us to convince our customers that we are fine and we have taken care of things. Of course, I've also had experiences where there are people who have joined our company, not now, quite some time back, few years back, set up the whole thing, stay for a week, and then being a startup, they just decide that I don't want to work for this company. To make them really understand that they have to, and they can't take away our, let's say, source code, which is probably set up, not the whole thing, but some parts of it on their laptops is not accepted. I think there are a lot of policies which comes to now physical security of the laptop, of the assets, what we have given, the source code, all of that, with people who come and just decide to go, which probably they will not do with a large company, but with us as startups, I think people feel it's okay, or they can do it and get away. And we've been we have learned from it, and we've been very strict, and we have many policies which we have set up to ensure that none of those things happen. And lastly, I've also got, funnily, because we have a lot of customer data, a lot of crucial data, there are people who unsolicitedly approach us saying, would you be able to sell us the data? I mean, we've been very clear that's not our business, but we do sometimes get such queries and ask, saying, hey, because you're a startup, maybe you're looking for money, so would you like to sell some of those data, because we are very interested. So I think these are really not required issues, but people really do that. So I've seen from a software angle to really hard business impact in terms of how people look at systems and data and startup, because they feel being small, a lot of things can be done. I think that's something which we see in the market. Back to you, Madhur.
Thanks, Ravi. I'm sure a lot of people in the audience are nodding their heads as you listed out some of these challenges. In fact, I was reading 52% of all the data breaches involve hacked devices. Like you said, just physically walking away with a laptop. Although there is once in a lifetime, of a laptop, the chances are that 1 in 10 laptops will get stolen or lost. So I make sure my laptop's always next to me. Chain it. But yes. So Nando, is your experience something similar? Any other challenges that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah. So stuff pretty similar. I think everything that Ravi said, I absolutely agree with that. In addition to that, I think, from a mindset of a startup, when we start off, I think security is definitely not the number one thing on our agenda. It's the need to get our product ready, get our MVP going, get stuff out in front of a customer, do demos, do POCs, those kind of stuff. So from that mindset, when you come, and security does take a backseat, because security has to work at multiple levels. Technology is one part of it, policies, people, there are many things that you need to address. And as you go through your life cycle and you face the kind of challenges which Ravi faced, which we have also faced multiple instances of similar issues, you have to address it from all the aspects. And that's really, as a CEO, as the owner of the organization, you have to realize that while initially maybe you can take it slightly easy because you're not on anybody's radar for the first year or two, once you're out with a product in the market, you will come on people's radar, and people will try to either compromise your IP or compromise your service, or do anything that may harm you for any monetary gain. And in our case, because we are also managing cloud setups for our customers, that adds another level of complexity where, stuff like DDoS attacks, any kind of compromise on their data sitting in their environment. It's not even in our control, it's in their corporate environment. We have to ensure a lot of data protection at that end. So it's a constant and a very steep learning curve, but it's not something which is optional. It is something which you have to constantly follow, learn, improve, enhance, and go on. Right.
Thanks, Sunando. I'll now come to our CISOs. Vijay and Anand, if you can share what in your mind comes first when we talk about data breaches, security breaches, any recent incidents that stand out, and what you found interesting about it. So, Vijay, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So let me catch up on what Ravi said and Sunanda said. Ravi exactly played out the playbook of the hackers community or the security researchers. There are very blurred boundary lines between security researchers and hackers. Okay, a lot of people trying to seek business through these measures. Very well explained, Ravi, on the playbook. And Sunando, yes, the first focus is on the MVP rather than putting security at the front. Because 99% of startups are not semantics and the McAfees to make security the first part of the MVP, right? So we do understand, and I have been working with startups where again security is one of the enablers and also becomes a go and no go decision for our customers when they buy our products, the SaaS products. Okay. Coming back to Madhurima's point, which she is touching upon now, is what is that common thread? I'll call it as a common thread between these recent breaches. Upstocks, Money Control, Dominoes, and Big Basket, all of them. Okay, most of them are using cloud. Okay, most of them are using cloud, and Domino's data is available everywhere. The common thread, that the reason which we have seen is compromised access keys. Okay, pointing back to what Ravi said, the access keys at times goes into code. Developers are so possessive about their code. They retain the code even longer than the company for which they wrote the code. Okay, the company would have moved on to the next version of the code, but they retain it, but the access keys are also there in it. And they put it in their personal repositories in GitHub. And there are bots scanning these GitHubs. Okay, and then they do a lot of I can call it as ML, assembling potential access keys and the IDs and everything and try to access it. Okay, resource of Dominoes or Upstocks or whatever it is. Okay, one of the key issues. Okay, from where once the access keys are compromised, many things get compromised. Second, public S3 buckets. Okay, how do you ensure the AWS S3 buckets or the Azure blobs, okay, which you call as blobs in Azure? How do you ensure they are not public? The playbook is very similar, and we companies to, okay, there are a couple of such things, one after the other. Okay, so these are the key things. There is a playbook of very basic weakness the hackers know, and the mitigation measure is, in fact, I am also doing it for Capillary Within. I have also created a similar hacker playbook internally. Okay, what I have been doing externally, I have created internally. Okay, I am also creating the other mitigation measure. For example, let me take it. Okay, how your asset inventory should have even the access keys, and where all you are using these access keys. If it is compromised, you should be able to turn it around, rotate it within the next 1 or 2 hours. Okay, in my business, I use around 50 payment gateways. Payment gateways are there in asset inventory, and I have a testing schedule for each of the payment gateway integrations in the SDK. These are kind of understanding our asset inventory. Okay, S3 buckets, blobs, inventory all of them, and prioritize them and start testing them. Okay, this we have, the companies have a bigger edge, higher edge than the hackers. We know our systems internally, they don't know our systems internally. They use scanning tools to first scan our perimeter and then they attack. I can also use scanning tools, so I use it. Okay, I'm going to talk to Fire Compass in a week or so. Okay, I've been working with them, and then Fire Compass or companies like them, they cannot help us identify the internal assets. Okay, which only I know.
what it is. Okay, so I'm creating a combination of what capillary only will know and what the hacker will know. Okay, a fire compass will help me understand what the hacker will know, but I'll have to bring in what only I will know. Okay, and that scanning tools can't discover. Only security researchers or hackers have to manually test it and discover. So we are building that external and internal knowledge composite asset inventory and protection plan. So we have to follow the common thread of the vulnerabilities which these threat factors are exploiting, like open public S3 buckets, access keys in codes. Okay, and to mitigate that, we put data loss prevention tools also. We are doing that. We have it in place. So it is identifying the common thread of vulnerabilities and blocking them. Yeah, back to you, Madhurima, on the panel.
Thanks, Vijay. So, Anand, we heard Fire Compass from Vijay. So, before you answer, tell us what Fire Compass does.
So Fire Compass is a SaaS-based solution which basically scans the global internet and also the darknet to identify the kind of GitHub repositories, S3 buckets. It'll look for the IPs and domains, and if someone has tried to create a phishing domain, in a name, it will look similar but it's different. So we do those kind of entire scanning of the internet and present it in a more readable and easy to digest format, and that helps people like Ravi and Sunando to take a conscious call and watch out where all their data could potentially be sitting, right? So that's what the Fire Compass in brief that we do. That's a SaaS based solution hosted on the cloud.
Thanks, Anand. And your thoughts on what you are seeing happening in the security space today?
See, I'll tell you, the word startup means, you're breaking the shackles of the enterprise, right? People who were constrained to work in a limited set of environment or constrained to work, they all typically they come out and do a startup. For them, startup is about being freedom, right? Once the freedom kicks in, then there's freedom in everything, either giving access to the servers, giving access to the code, giving access to the laptop, work from anywhere. It gets into that kind of a cultural mindset. So the security is not part of the startup culture or the mindset. If it is a one person startup, he has all the freedom, so he knows what's doing. But when the team starts expanding, that is when the startup should start thinking about security. Many a times, right, what Ravi said about ex-employees carrying code, some of these things are related to doing a proper due diligence of whom we are hiring. Okay, that guy could be somebody who is like really fantastic in the industry and you paid top dollars, but for all that, he could have an ambition to do his own startup, right? So things like that. So proper due diligence is needed. One second thing is freedom with restriction. It's more of a democratic setup, but freedom with restriction is to be there in the place. You have more than 5 people whom you can't see, especially in the given pandemic situation where everyone is working remote, then restrict the access. Okay, restrict from where they can log in. So these are all very simple. I'm not suggesting that you go buy $1 million solutions and put it. All I'm trying to say is, since both Sunando and Ravi are using cloud extensively, cloud offers these. It's part of that solution. We just need to be aware and enable it, and that will take away 30 to 40% of the issues that is currently there. And then from there you start building up the ecosystem of security. My only suggestion is don't retrofit a security at the end of it. You will never be able to fit it. It's just like trying to merge two things which don't merge at all, right? You will always have problems and things will have a lot of leaks and gaps. So for my the message to startup is, don't get scared of security. Security is there to protect you. We might not bring top revenue, we might not bring customers, but we are there to protect what you already have.
Very well said, Anand. And I think that's something we all are realizing given the growth in the attacks that's happening, and especially with the COVID scenario, right? You said work from anywhere. That's a reality today, and probably is going to stay for longer. So,
Right.
Sunando, any specific things, measures that you have implemented in your organization, which is helping you overcome this challenge of managing security in the work from anywhere scenario?
Yeah, so I think as Anand just said right now, I think this whole who gets access to what is the first question every startups needs to answer. It's the cheapest thing to answer. It's all about setting up your role-based access control policies and ensure that only people who need to access a certain kind of data or a certain kind of system services have have that access. So what we did well before we had the lockdowns happened was that we implemented our own internal access control system using a platform called LDAP, and based on that we set up very clear policies based on, so everybody is to access the corporate environment, you're obviously doing a VPN into that, but once you VPN in, who gets access to what is very clearly defined in that. And some users have read-only access, some users have edit access, some users can connect from there to our customer environment, some cannot, and so on and so forth. And really, all this is done without investing even $1 in any paid tool. So it was fairly straightforward. So I think that's the first thing every startup should do, is come up with an internal policy on who gets access to what and implement that using a platform like Elda. Thank you.
Thanks, Anand. I think that's a very interesting thing that you mentioned, that you did this without spending any money. Given the frugality that we need to exhibit, especially as startups, that's good to know that this can be done. And implementing security does not always have to be an expensive affair. That's my takeaway from what you just said. Ravi, you had shared a lot of challenges that you saw. Any interesting, and I'm going to use the word hacks, any interesting hacks or any interesting things that you did to mitigate those challenges that you want to share with the broader community?
Yeah, so one, of course, is the access rights, which Rhonda talked and also Anand spoke about. I think those are the first things we ensured that those are in place. Also, the challenges I talked about happened over the last decade. I mean, different companies, different startups, we saw different challenges. One is we have really ensured that the access rights and control of who gets access to what is very strictly enforced now. So that challenge is kind of taken away. We also saw in our products another interesting problem which started happening, that our customers in their own, we also have a role-based access in our products. There are people who are actually modifying, deleting, and then they blame us saying, hey, you have done something. So we have also enforced with our customers now to ensure that not only they have a very clear role-based access to our systems in our system, and also we started showing them the audit logs to say what's happening with the system, who changed what from which IP. So that kind of prevented them now to put blame or pass the blame onto us, because we are the technology vendor, but it's one of their people doing something. So those things helped even in the last 1 year during our pandemic, that now we have a much more transparency to our customers to tell them that if there is a challenge, it's not us, but it could also be somebody else, some other source, and block those things. Again, access right, access control for their employees, their people who access the system, and also be very transparent in terms of who's accessing what. So I think that has really helped us in this pandemic, at least in the last 1 year. The other things are we are also an IoT company in the way we do things. We are SaaS and IoT. A lot of data, there are no standards. So a lot of data from IoT devices and sensors fly around the internet, not encrypted. So we are now ensuring that a lot of things what we do are encrypted, because there are people who claim that I have sniffed it. I know what you're sending between an IoT device in a vehicle going to the cloud. I know what it is. There are hackers who claim those. So we have kind of ensure that it is one, use secure connections wherever it is possible. It's whether it's secure socket or depends on what protocols are being used there. At the same time, also have our own encryption so that we ensure that nobody can sniff into that data which comes out. So these are two things in the last 1 year we took special care of, because there is nobody in office. There everybody is remote. Even customers are remote. Not they are also not in their offices right now. So we had to be sure that everything is safe, not only our side, also our customer side. So these are the two things we have tried in the last 1 year to be sure that everything is safe. I mean, we have not had any issues, just that we are hardening it as and when we discover any vulnerabilities, we are hardening ourselves so that we don't wait for somebody to hack us to figure out what the issue is. Madhurima, over back to you.
So yeah, thank you. So I have a question. See, for tech startups, they still have a better understanding of these issues. What about startups that are in the non-tech areas, but they leverage technology to have their operations running, right? Any specific guidance tips that you would like to share with them, Vijay and Anand, from a CISO perspective? Because they won't be a tech startup to have all the systems in place, but just that they have a lot of data. Anything apart from what's already been discussed that you'd like to share? Vijay, anything you'd want to share first?
I will tell you, tech startup or non-tech startup, Madhurima, I have worked in tech startups for 3 years. Doesn't matter. What matters is the intent and the culture of the whole organization, especially what flows down from the management, from the CEO to his direct reportees. Okay, if you have the CEO's support and his direct reportee support, you can execute more 90% of your security objectives very effectively. Okay, that's the most important thing. And in fact, freshers, I worked over 3 startups now. The setup in Capillary is so enabling to implement security objectives. This I could even call it as the best in, when compared to Stanchart or Fidelity Investments. Okay, so it is the intent of the management and the culture / the positive attitude of the management. Now coming to how to implement it, a tech startup or a non-tech startup, they don't have time for security. Let's admit it. That's not their priority when they start up. So what I have enabled it for very young startups is, I know the freelancers who do very surgical scripting based automation for security. Okay, one man show freelancers or companies who know exactly how to script out in the Ubuntu Linux what controls have to be there, which customers expect, and which are easy vulnerabilities for threat factors to attack. Okay, when they write the first line of the code, when they go and install the instance, these consultants are available at very less rates, very reasonable rates. In fact, you will be surprised. Get them what you think we need to do it manually every time. These guys have done it 100 times. They'll come and give you the script. You run it for every instance that comes up. Okay, run the template for every instance that comes up. First 5 years you can live with this. Every 4 or 5 months, call them once, tell them this is a new thing that we are doing or we have done. They will adjust the scripts. They'll automate it for you. Okay, even your customer auditors, you show them 100 documents, but you show them an automated script which is achieving the result. The customers are also happy, and you can easily scale up. Every time the script runs, it goes forward. Okay, so there are simple methods which very early stage startups can use. Find the right people, get the right people in for 5 to 10 man days of effort. They'll do all these things for you. They'll help you. They'll set you up for the next 6 months. Again, in 6 months, once you've done a lot of changes, call them back, tell them what you have done. Again, take this help. And in the as Sunando said, there are 2 things. One is policy, a documented. I'll call it simply a documented instruction or rule for granting access, removing access, or changing access rights. Right? That is to be documented. What startups cannot achieve easily is culture to policy, which I was taking the management's culture of supporting security, right? That is still going to be a culture driven one for next 5 to 10 years. It will take a lot more number of years to become a very big enterprise and drive the culture through a policy, a documented policy, right? That cannot be documented at a very early stage. That's where the entire management's support is required. We need to put that in place first, and that is a give and take action. For example, as early as possible, the person who is handling security should start giving real metrics that matter. Okay, real metrics and metrics that matter and really make sense. For example, your board is going to ask a question, the very same thing which Madhurima asked this panel. What are you going to do? What is Capillary's measures for the recent breaches that are happening in the industry? Right? Your metrics for that quarter to the board has to be on those lines. Don't wait for the board and the CEO's LT team to ask you that question. You are next, or you need to give an interim update to them. It knows that this team which is working for security in this startup, who it is a one-man team or even let it be 2-man or 15 people. This team knows its job. You are going that I call it as equity or the currency of respect. Once you generate that, develop that, you are going to get that mutual benefit from the management. They also support you a lot. Okay, it's not just that you go and ask them to support you. It doesn't happen that way. A lot of effort is required, patience is required, and the security team has to understand the business. Without understanding business, you can't know where are your assets, because your assets are not just in systems, because the information is lying in many places with many people, many vendors. In a startup, yesterday there may not have been a vendor, but today you will have that vendor empaneled, and by one employee just swiping his credit card and it will go through a reimbursement, not accounts payable. You'll not even know that an employee has reimbursed a vendor expense. And for $50, we would have given a lot of data to them. Okay, so we need to understand how our business works. Yeah, back to you, Madhuri.
Thanks, Vijay. I think a question that a lot of us would have, where do you find these one-man freelancers which you talked about? How do people find them?
Yeah, familiarity, and we know after having worked for so many years, we know people who do some. Just ping us. We'll let you know the contacts, and they will do it. That's it.
Okay, great. So yeah, so if people want, then they'll reach out to you, Vijay.
Vijay can do a startup of freelancers. He can do a startup with connecting freelancers to startup.
Yeah, I'm happy. I think CISO role is fantastic. So yeah.
Yeah, I would just like to add one thing on the documentation side, which I just mentioned. So one thing we do, I think it's a good hack that we over a time developed. So when we initially used to give offer letters, they were very simple 2-pager appointment letters, just covering the basic term. Startup don't like getting a very complex language. One of the things that we were advised is that as part of the offer letter, you should cover confidentiality of data comprehensively. So 2 things we changed. One, we made our offer letter into a 12-page letter, out of which 8 pages just talks about data confidentiality, data protection, and how to ensure that, and the responsibility which is there on every employee. And so we even took it to 3 lawyers and covered it as comprehensively as possible, and then linked that back to the exit process also. So at the time of exit, we take a declaration from them. Okay, so one was making it very comprehensive, and we get them signed on a stamp paper. So in India, there's a psyche, anything on stamp paper is taken far more seriously than a company letterhead. So this is a very simple hack. It costs us 100 rupees per hire, but every offer letter now is more like a contract. Second is at the time of exit, we now have a 1-page declaration in the exit form, which links back to all those clauses that are there, that you're conforming to this, you've deleted code, you've deleted data, you've deleted backups, all that. So check mark, and a sign at the bottom. I don't know how effective as an outcome it will be, because only when a breach happens, we'll come to know. Nothing has happened till date. But I feel that at a psychology level, this has a very big impact when somebody is signing is at the time of joining on stamp paper, and 2 years later or 3 years later, and the person is exiting, he's looking through that check mark and checking off and signing again that I confirm to all of that. And in both the documents, it is mentioned that criminal action can be taken in case of a breach, etc. So we don't talk about these things with much seriousness on a day-to-day basis, but definitely time of entry and exit. These are 2 checkpoints where we definitely use very serious, very formal, very legal language to address this point.
I think that's a brilliant idea that everybody should. Did this change scare away any potential employees looking at a 12-page offer letter?
Not till date. Actually, it's not the offer letter, it's the appointment letters. They're already on board, so they don't have much choice. Offer letter is still a 1-page, so it's appointment
Madhurima,
letter.
maybe just to add to Sunando, we have ensured that this is done even for the interns, because startups, one of the things we do is work with a lot of interns. So we realize that that is another potential source of breach, because unknowingly, I mean, they don't understand as students, they do a lot of things without knowing. So when we offer, even we make them sign an NDA, and when they go, we really check everything. So it scares a lot of them when they come in, because they think something is wrong, because they're asked to now sign a document legally, But we have ensured that we insist that you have to sign. And now I think there is a more acceptance that it's okay to sign. And we also explain to them that it's not that we are making you do something. It is just to ensure that there is an NDA there. There is a non-disclosure in terms of whatever you do with us. So we are also ensuring that it's also for interns. So I think, Sunanda, I think that's an excellent point you made. I think interns is also helping us in a very big way.
Also, I think what it adds to that is when they're handling data, when they're handling confidential information thereafter, they are also extra careful, I feel. Once they've seen and reviewed a document which they have signed on a comprehensive confidentiality, their awareness about data security also improves. So when they're writing every line of code and stuff like putting your keys onto a GitHub bucket, so those things I'm hoping will not be so a common practice then. Although exactly the same thing happened last week. One of the interns put a key on their GitHub, but we caught it in the NAR. But yeah, these things happen.
Yeah, no. And I think it ties in with what Vijay said, right? Building that culture of taking security seriously. If you get people to sign something, they'll think about it and be doubly sure that they're not doing anything unknowingly, as Ravi also said. So when do you think it's a right time for startups to start thinking about security very seriously, right? I mean, as you said, Sunanda, first it's all about creating that MVP. The first few years just go in, fighting the fires that are blowing around you. But what do you think? What have you seen in your experience is when is the right time to start taking this seriously? Start spending some more time about educating your employees, right? Like in enterprises, in corporates, we have mandatory cybersecurity trainings that we have to undergo every quarter, every year, and you just have to do it, otherwise your access will be taken away. When do you think those kind of things is something that startups should start thinking about? And this is a question for anybody who wants to take this up. Yeah.
I'll go first. So from our perspective, I think if I look back at our journey, so I think we started taking it seriously just before going into production with our first customer. So we are an on-prem platform. So we are not a true SaaS as in a single deployment for all our customers. We are an on-prem platform. So every deployment happens for a customer separately. So before we went live with our first customer, we realized that this is going to be a production platform. We really have to get it checked. So we obviously did our internal testing, vulnerability assessment, penetration testing, and all that. But then before going live with our final version of our code, we brought in an external consultant, a VAPT consultant, who spent about 15 days, doing a thorough check. And then now what we do, every time we update our code base, which is once in 3 months, we do a round of internal testing. And for every major release, we get the external consultant to come and test it. And we try to maintain a certain amount of code homogeneity across all our deployments so that only tested and current code and all the patches that are going are maintained across the board. So yes, so to answer it in a more general sense, I would say till you are in an MVP stage and your product is not in the market, so as to speak, and not making money, you're sort of below the radar for hackers. Moment you are in a commercial business stage, I think that's when you come in the radar of hackers and people see value in what you're doing, and people see then a value in your code and in your IP and in your data. And that's when the malicious attempts, I feel, would increase. So I think that's the time when you really need to amp it up from a security policies, practices, technology, etc.
So Madhurima, Anant here, what I would like to add on to what Sunanda said is, see, we always are the proponents of security by design, right? When startups are thinking about a particular idea or they are doing a whiteboard session, just bringing, having somebody from a security angle to have a view of how the architecture is being developed, I think that will be a good start. Later on, when things starts progressing, right, as you said about the code and getting the pen testers, those things follow later. Many a times what happens is the design itself will be started without security in mind, and then in between we are trying to retrofit a security, and that becomes too much of a overhead for a startup to handle.
So I'm presuming, especially for tech startups, there is, the CTO takes that responsibility coming from a certain experience or domain. So in our case, that's what happened. The CTO took responsibility
Right.
from security from a design angle, and the pen test and all that is like more of a follow-up to ensure that whatever we designed for is what we finally delivered.
I mean, also additional point to add as a milestone. I mean, I agree with what Sunanda and Anant were saying. By design, by intent, we need to have it. I mean, once you've got bitten, second time when you do your startup, you already do it the right way from the beginning. I think that's a learning as an entrepreneur. You learn out of it. The other thing which also gets very formal is when there is an institutional investor coming or an investment round which happens. As part of due diligence, a lot of these things get checked. So even if you miss something, some of them are gets covered during a becoming formal role. What I mean is, the moment you're getting invested, you're moved from an MVP to actually a real good business, whether it's investment of whatever nature. I'm not saying any particular round. I think that's another milestone. Apart from the customer validations, it's another milestone where you get a lot more formal, which also ensures that you're more safe.
Right. So I will come. Yeah, Vijay, you want to add something?
Yeah, there are to add to all of them, there are multiple aspects to this, Madhurima and the panelists here. One is, are we in a B2C? I'm just taking the largest category, B2C or B2B. Okay, B2B, even in B2B, many Indian startups, I limit myself to the Indian startup ecosystem. Many of the Indian startups start targeting the SMBs and the micro segment to get the ARR fast, right? The recurring revenues faster, faster growth. So if I am targeting a B2B for the enterprise, okay, security, integration, and your enterprise sales engine, three things have to tick. Okay, let us look at the enterprise sales engine. That's not the part of this discussion. The security and integration, in that we are talking about security. Okay, from day one, your security has to be enterprise grade. If you are an enterprise B2B startup, okay, if you're a B2B startup for the SMB and below SMB or SME, then your customers ask for security is slightly less stringent, or number of questions they ask is less stringent. This is one in the B2B segment. And on the B2C, it depends on the geography or operating. In India, the B2C regulations are not very hard, okay, very stringent. You work in the Europe and the US customers, your regulations are strong, the risk asks are strong in the B2C, okay, and you're also under a bigger scanner and monitor of the European EU regulators, like the European Data Commission and all those regulators, okay, EDPB, okay, European Data Protection Board and all those commissions keep monitoring you. It depends on your customer segment. It depends on your geography you're operating, your customer profile. So when should we take security seriously? There is no exact binary response for this as to this is the right time to start or this is not the right time to start. It depends on these factors. Plus, let me take it this way. For day one startup, I'm okay to spend 5 cents. Okay, as my customer profile increases, depending on my ARR, my security expense also should go up. Okay, because the data at stake, the value of data at stake is higher. Okay, so in one of the places, what we actually did was measure security expense by per $1 million of revenue. Okay, year on year. Okay, so we do the right things in terms of how much you are spending. Some years you might spend a lot on security, and then again it should start flowing in a lot of benefits in subsequent years, because year 3 I spent $5 million on security, then I should see a lot of benefits in the subsequent years with a lesser number of cents per $1 million of revenue, okay, on the security. Okay, so it always I prefer tying it to the revenue size of the company, the ARR, how much I'm going to spend on security. I have a benchmark around that, so we work on this.
Right, thanks, Vijay. So I'm going to go, around the table and ask each of you for which your favorite tools or startups in the cybersecurity space are. And you have some time to think. We'll ask the audience if you have any questions, please type it in the chat window and we can take it up one by one. And follow me, do prompt me if there are any questions that I'm unable to see but that are there. So with that, we'll go around and just ask each of you for your favorite tools, startups that are there in the cybersecurity space. And Ravi, why don't we start with you? Any names you want to share with the audience that will be useful for them?
So I'm not really an expert from that angle. My team takes care of it. I don't have a tool or something in my mind to talk about. But like I said, the best thing we have been trying to do is ensure that access control is in good shape. I think that's the first step we do. And then there are multiple tools that team is used to ensure that we are in shape. So probably I'm not the right expert to talk about the tool. So I'll let others answer that.
Sanando?
Yeah, so I think the first and foremost is a VPN tool. A lot of people allow open access to from laptops to their data. That's I think first investment, if at all, people should do, which is implement a VPN framework. Then some of the tools that I have not implemented in Indicus, but I've seen large enterprises use and very effectively. One is a tool called Net Monastery, or a platform. They're a SIEM platform. I think they're one of the only Indian security startup to be in the Gartner Cool Vendor. Again, a startup run by a friend of mine. Beautiful product, does real-time security monitoring and does some very interesting product. I think they renamed it to something DNIF or something right now. Then second company which we work very closely with for our security support is a company out of Bombay called Security Brigade. They are a VAPT company and they do a lot of security services for us, and some of the largest banks, some of the largest telcos in the country, they work with them also. So again, a very old, very, very good set of people, ethical hackers, and they've done a fantastic job with us. And that's about it. Yeah.
Thanks, Sanando. Vijay?
I will not only say my favorites in the startup space. I will also include some open source. I like working with Fire Compass. The team is excellent. Okay. Yeah. The engagement that Bikash Barai and his team bring in is excellent. And vSecure app in Hyderabad. Okay. A good team. And startup security space. Yes, this is what it is. There is in the open source space, obviously, Kali Linux for my team. Okay. And Burpsuit, not exactly open source, it has both open source and paid version, and followed by Wazoo for SIEM, and Falco also an IDS in the containers and Kubernetes space. Modsec as a WAF, web application firewall. These are all open source, which have worked out very well for us. And ClamAV antivirus works out very well in the open source space. Okay, very much integrable with the container space, ClamAV, and the Kubernetes space. Fantastic results. So this about it, and more importantly, it's important how do you integrate them. I bring in these tools together, then I need to integrate them and do the right log correlation. That is what their separate service that has come up called a security orchestration. Okay, but trust me, that is the most important thing. You put all these tools, then you need to make them talk together and talk to you. Okay, and that's the most important thing. That's what is my mind.
Thanks, Vijay. Anand?
Yeah, Fire Compass for sure.
And you can start with Fire Compass. Yes.
Yeah, and the other important tool is our brains, human brains, right? So any tool is as good as the person that is using it. If you don't have the skilled manpower, you don't know how to use a tool, even the best tools in the world will not give you any results. So having a skilled human brain is another tool that we all need, especially in startups.
I think that's very, very well said, Anand.
Well said. Yeah, well said.
So we have some audience questions. What are the key controls pertinent to managing software supply chain attacks? Anybody who'd like to take this question?
Vijay, you want to go?
Yeah, software supply chain attacks. Very complex to manage.
Yeah.
Very complex to manage. Okay. Needless to say, it will go to start with the right contracts in place, because the speed at which we want to onboard a software vendor. Okay. Let us take any of these, New Relics or Mailchimp or SendGrid. Okay. Now, onboarding them, business wants it at the speed of thought. Okay, going back to the title of the book, which we all read 20 years ago, right? Now, they want it very fast. Now we need to have a systematic method to bring them on board. What happens is, when a CTO comes with an idea, when he comes to me, the VP engineering or CTO comes to me and says, I want to onboard this vendor, help me analyze them, verify them. Okay, are they good? He's going to come to me 3 days or 4 days before releasing the PO. Okay, I told this because I have a frequent email flyer to all these my colleagues asking, tell me what vendors you have in mind, not 3 days away from PO release. What vendors you have in mind, what services you are working for with vendors. So I have to collect this information from my colleagues in technology and customer success, so that I plan my approach and resources, people to test them. See, I put all the contracts in place, but the real deal thing is the security of the interface with which we will integrate with them, right? So I need to do a lot of unstructured catch up much in advance, 2 to 3 months much in advance, when they start thinking of getting a vendor. That gives me 2 to 3 months to plan along with them. The moment they say, okay, they have done all the POCs, I come to know if they want to do a POC with an access to my system, I have to approve it. I'll come to know by then. But if they don't need an access for doing a POC, I would not come to know unless until I do this non-standard tapping into their minds much in advance. Okay, so I'll have to, in a startup, we need to do that unstructured tapping to their thoughts and minds, get into the product roadmap meetings as well many times, tech meetings, and still they will not discuss that point when you are there, probably because that was not there in the agenda. Before it comes and hits a process gateway, many startups will not have a process gateway to let you know that the vendor is coming in. I need to front load it much in advance through many conversations. Trust me, this is the most challenging thing. And then I think over a period of time, after having worked for a company for 2 years, you know where are the places where you need to tap. That's why working with the business, knowing the business, and little bit of spending more time in the company helps. If a CISO keeps changing a lot, he loses the advantage of knowledge of the system. Okay, so it's very important we work with people for a longer time to give the benefit of the information security department back to the firm. Yeah. You're on mute, Madhurima.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. I muted myself now. So we do have a lot of other questions coming in, but in the interest of time, we'll wrap up now. But I think the audience can reach out to you on LinkedIn, if that's okay with all of you. They'll do that and ask some some more queries and questions. So overall, I think it's been a very, very insightful discussion. We've understood that what is important is to start thinking about security, taking it seriously, build that culture where you understand the importance of security. Sometimes the investment can be linked to your sales. It's safe, probably, till you're not on the radar, till you're not commercially growing. You're still protected, but once you're raising funding, or if you are, out there selling to customers, it's imperative that you have protected yourself. And in turn, you're protecting your customers' data, you're protecting the company's assets, whether it's the source code, whether it's data, whatever is residing. And one of the easiest way to do is to have access control right from the beginning. Have the normal checks and balances, like calling out stuff in your appointment letters, in your exit letters, so that unknowingly people do not do any kind of a blunders which can cost the company. And then, you all heard about a lot of tools that are being used by the CISOs. Try them out. I think somebody asked about the name of that SIAM platform again. We'll put it out on a tweet as well. So Nanda, you shared about the SIAM platform, right? Just say that name again.
No, that was Vijay, I think.
Vijay,
Sunanda
S.
said Dini for Net Monastery. I spoke about Vasu. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that got answered again. Thanks. So thank you everyone for joining, and I'll hand it over to Paulomi. Paulomi.
Thank you, everybody. I think we have shot way beyond the time, so thank you for your patience being with us. I think we can close the session now.
Hey, wonderful meeting all of you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you then.
Bye-bye.
Thanks all of you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.